Couldn't even get into medical school, my father spat, throwing my rejection letter onto the kitchen table. What are we supposed to tell people? That our daughter is a failure. I stood there, 22 years old, feeling like I was 12 again. The familiar weight of disappointment pressed down on my shoulders as my mother buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with theatrical sobs. Julia got accepted to Johns Hopkins, she whimpered, referring to my cousin. And here you are, with nothing. Nothing. I wanted to explain that I'd only applied to medical school because they'd forced me to. That my real passion lay in real estate development, something I'd discovered during my business degree. But I knew better than to speak up. In the Chang household, children didn't have dreams of their own. I have a job offer, I said quietly. Anderson Development Group wants me to. A real estate company. My father's voice dripped with contempt. You think we spent all that money on your education so you could sell houses? It's not selling houses, Dad. It's commercial development. They're one of the biggest. Enough. He slammed his hand on the table, making the fancy china rattle. The same china that only came out when their friends visited, so they could pretend we were the perfect family. No daughter of mine will waste her life showing empty buildings to strangers. My mother wiped her eyes, careful not to smudge her expensive mascara. What will we tell the Kims? Their daughter just started her residency at Mayo Clinic. I'd spent my entire life trying to live up to their expectations. Every decision, every achievement measured against their friends' children. Nothing was ever enough. I start work next Monday, I said, forcing strength into my voice. I've already accepted the position. The silence that followed was deafening. My father stood up slowly, his face a mask of cold fury. Then you can find somewhere else to live. I won't support this disgrace. Dad, you have until Sunday to get out. He turned to leave the kitchen, then paused. And don't expect any help. If you want to throw away everything we've given you, you can do it on your own. My mother wouldn't even look at me as she followed him out. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the medical textbooks they bought me, the MCAT prep materials I'd never wanted, and the weight of 2 decades of crushed dreams. I had $3,427 in my bank account, savings from my part-time job during college. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. By Sunday morning, I'd found a tiny studio apartment that I could barely afford. As I loaded the last box into my old Honda Civic, a car my father reminded me constantly was an embarrassment, my mother appeared in the doorway. Sarah, she said, her voice quiet. It's not too late. Apply again next year. Dr. Kim said he'd write you a recommendation. I closed the trunk, turning to face her. Mom, I don't want to be a doctor. I never did. You're being selfish, she sniffed. After everything we've done for you. Everything they'd done for me, like forcing me into advanced classes I hated, like scheduling my life down to the minute with activities that would look good on a medical school application, like making sure I knew that every accomplishment was somehow inadequate. Goodbye, Mom. She didn't respond, just turned and went back inside. I drove away from my childhood home with tears streaming down my face, but also with something I'd never felt before. Freedom. The studio apartment was exactly what you'd expect for $800 a month. Cramped, with mysterious stains on the carpet and a kitchen so small you couldn't open the oven door fully. But it was mine. Monday morning, I walked into Anderson Development Group's gleaming office tower wearing my one professional outfit, a navy blue suit I bought on sale for interviews. My new boss, Diane Anderson, greeted me with a warm smile. Welcome to the team, Sarah. Ready to learn the real estate development business from the ground up. I nodded eagerly. I'll do whatever it takes. And I meant it. Over the next 6 months, I absorbed everything I could. I stayed late studying building codes, zoning laws, and market analysis. I volunteered for every project, no matter how small. While my colleagues complained about weekend site visits, I saw each one as an opportunity to learn. Deanne noticed. One Friday evening, as I was reviewing environmental impact reports long after everyone else had left, she stopped by my desk. Sarah, why real estate development? I looked up, caught off guard by the question. I like creating something real, something that lasts. When I see an empty lot or a rundown building, I can envision what it could become. She smiled, pulling up a chair. Your parents wanted you to be a doctor, didn't they? I stared at her, surprised. How did you know? I see it a lot in this industry. Children of immigrant parents expected to become doctors or lawyers. But some of us have different dreams. She paused, like turning around failing properties and building something meaningful. I nodded, feeling tears threaten. No one had ever understood before. I have a project, Diane continued. It's small, probably too small for Anderson Group, but it has potential. An old warehouse in the arts district. The owner's practically giving it away because it needs so much work. My heart started beating faster. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you take a risk. The asking price is $175,000. I know a private lender who might be interested, especially if I vouch for you. I laughed nervously. Me? Buy a warehouse? I can barely make rent. Diane leaned forward. Sometimes the biggest opportunities come when we're least prepared for them. Think about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled up the warehouse listing on my laptop, studying every detail. The building was a mess. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, years of neglect. But location was everything in real estate, and the arts district was growing. The next morning, I called the private lender. With Diane's recommendation and my business degree, they agreed to finance 80% of the purchase price. I would need to come up with $35,000 for the down payment. I had exactly $4,892 in savings. But I also had an idea. The warehouse had a small attached office space that could be renovated quickly. If I lived there while working on the rest of the building, it was crazy, probably illegal, definitely desperate. I did it anyway. 2 months later, I owned the warehouse. I moved out of my apartment and into the office space, setting up a makeshift bathroom and kitchen. Every morning, I went to work at Anderson Group. Every evening and weekend, I worked on my building. You two became my best friend. I learned basic electrical work, plumbing, and how to patch walls. When something was beyond my skills, I traded with local contractors, helping with their paperwork and permits in exchange for labor. 6 months in, I got my first break. A local artist collective needed studio space. The warehouse wasn't fully renovated, but they loved the raw industrial aesthetic. I rented them the main floor at below market rates, using the income to fund more improvements. Word spread through the arts community. Soon I had a waiting list of potential tenants, artists, designers, small creative businesses. Each one brought their own improvements, turning the warehouse into something unique. 1 year after buying the building, its value had tripled. I refinanced, using the equity to buy another property, then another. 5 years passed. I built a reputation for turning around troubled properties, particularly in arts and cultural districts. My company, Nova Development, specialized in community-focused projects that preserved neighborhood character while creating sustainable growth. I rarely thought about my parents anymore. Through mutual friends, I heard snippets of news. They'd moved to a bigger house in the suburbs, still chasing status. They bragged about Julia's medical career, but never mentioned me. Then came the call that changed everything. Ms. Chang. The voice was professional, formal. This is David Montgomery from First National Bank. I'm calling about the Riverside Heights property. My heart skipped. Riverside Heights was the most prestigious development in the city. Multi-million-dollar homes with river views and private docks. Yes. We're handling a purchase agreement for your parents, Richard and Helen Chang. They're interested in the Morrison estate. I knew the property, a $5 million mansion that had been on the market for months. I see, I said carefully. And why are you calling me? Well, he cleared his throat. Given the unique nature of the property and the financing requirements, we need all the immediate family members to sign off on the purchase. Your parents suggested you'd be happy to help. I sat back in my chair, staring out my office window at the city skyline. 5 years of silence, and now they needed my signature. Did they mention that they kicked me out? That they haven't spoken to me in 5 years? Silence on the other end. I'll have to get back to you, I said and hung up. Less than an hour later, my phone rang again. This time, a number I hadn't seen in 5 years. Time to face the music. I let the phone ring 3 times before answering. Hello, Mother. Sarah. Her voice hadn't changed, still that perfect blend of disappointment and accusation. We need to talk. About the Riverside Heights house? I kept my tone neutral, professional. Your father and I are prepared to forgive you, she said, as if bestowing a great honor. Come to dinner tomorrow. We can discuss everything. I almost laughed. 5 years of silence, and now they were prepared to forgive me. I'm afraid I'm quite busy, I replied. Perhaps we could meet at my office instead. Your office? Yes, Nova Development. I'm sure your bank provided you with the details. A pause. I could almost hear her mental calculations, trying to figure out how her useless daughter had ended up in a position of power over their dream house. Very well, she said finally. What time? Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Don't be late. I hung up before she could respond. My assistant, Mike, poked his head in. Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Close, I smiled grimly. My parents are coming tomorrow. Make sure security knows they're expected. His eyes widened. He knew my story. Most of my employees did. I believed in transparency, in showing that success could come from anywhere, even from being kicked out with nothing. Want me to schedule a fake emergency meeting for halfway through? No, I shook my head. It's time to finish this properly. The next day, I dressed carefully in a charcoal gray suit that cost more than my father's monthly salary. My office, on the top floor of a building I now owned, offered a perfect view of the city, including Riverside Heights. At exactly 2 p.m., Mike buzzed me. Mr. and Mrs. Chang are here. Send them in. They entered like royalty entering a peasant's hut, faces pinched with barely concealed disdain. My mother wore her favorite pearl necklace, the one she always wore when she needed to feel superior. My father looked older, his hair now more gray than black, but his expression was just as stern as I remembered. Sarah. My mother started forward, arms outstretched as if for a hug. I remained seated behind my desk. Please sit. I gestured to the chairs across from me. They sat, my father's eyes darting around the office, taking in the awards on the walls, the scale models of my developments, the clear symbols of success he hadn't expected. Nice office, he said stiffly. You've done. Well? Yes, I agreed. I have. Now, about the Riverside Heights property. My mother leaned forward eagerly. It's perfect, Sarah. Just what we always dreamed of. And now that you're successful, you can help make it happen. The bank just needs your signature. Why? She blinked. What? Why does the bank need my signature? You're both employed. You have assets. Why do you need my approval? My father shifted uncomfortably. It's a complicated transaction. The bank has certain requirements. The bank, I cut in, is concerned about the source of your down payment. They've noticed large cash deposits to your account over the past month. They want a family member with, I smiled thinly, verifiable income to co-sign. Silence. How did you? My mother began. I own 30% of First National Bank's commercial real estate portfolio. David Montgomery calls me directly about unusual transactions. I leaned forward. Would you like to explain where the money came from? My father's face reddened. That's none of your business. Actually, it is, because you're asking me to put my name, my company's reputation, on the line for you. So I did some digging. I pulled out a folder and opened it. You borrowed money from loan sharks. High interest, off-the-books lenders. The kind of people I deal with sometimes in property acquisition. I met their eyes. The kind of people you don't want to owe money to. My mother's hand flew to her pearls. We had no choice. The Kins just bought a house in Riverside Heights. We couldn't let them. Still competing with the neighbors, I sighed. Still trying to prove you're better than everyone else. And now you need my help to do it. We're your parents, my father said sharply. Of course we expect. Expect? I stood up slowly. Like you expected me to become a doctor. Like you expected me to live my life according to your plans. I walked to the window, looking out at the city I'd helped shape. You kicked me out with nothing because I dared to choose my own path. And now you expect me to risk everything I've built to save you from your own bad decisions. We did everything for you. My mother cried. We sacrificed. No, my voice was quiet but firm. You sacrificed nothing. You pushed your dreams onto me, and when I refused to comply, you threw me away. I turned back to face them. I bought my first property with nothing but determination and ramen noodles for dinner. I slept in an abandoned warehouse while building my company. I learned I worked, I created something real. I met their stunned faces. Without you. My father stood up. If you won't help your own parents, sit down. He sat. I returned to my desk and pressed the intercom. Mike, bring in the documents, please. Mike entered with a thick folder, placing it in front of me. I'm not going to co-sign your loan, I said, opening the folder. Instead, I'm going to make you an offer. I pulled out a contract. Nova Development will buy the Morrison estate. We'll lease it to you at market rate, with an option to buy after 5 years, if you meet certain conditions. Conditions? My mother whispered. First, you'll both undergo financial counseling. No more loan sharks. No more keeping up with the neighbors. I slid the contract across the desk. Second, you'll attend monthly family therapy sessions with me. They stared at me like I'd grown a second head. And third, I continued, you'll acknowledge, publicly at the next family gathering, that my success came from following my own path, not yours. This is ridiculous, my father sputtered. We won't be treated like children by our own daughter. Then I guess you'll have to explain to the Kims why you can't move to Riverside Heights after all. I shrugged. Your choice. My mother grabbed the contract, eyes scanning the terms. You can afford this house. Mother, I could buy the entire Riverside Heights development if I wanted to. This building we're sitting in. I own it. That warehouse you sneered at 5 years ago, worth 8 figures now. I leaned back in my chair, still think real estate was a waste of my education. They looked at each other, decades of pride warring with desperation. Finally, my father reached for the pen I placed on the desk. Wait, I said. He paused. Before you sign, understand this. We're not doing this because we're family. We're doing this because despite everything, I learned something valuable from you both. What's that? My mother asked quietly. That the greatest success comes from proving others wrong. I stood up. You have 24 hours to decide. I suggest you use them wisely. After they left, I stayed in my office watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold. Mike brought me a coffee and perched on the edge of my desk. Think they'll sign? I nodded. They will. Their pride won't let them do otherwise. I sipped my coffee. The therapy sessions will be interesting though. He chuckled. You're not actually going to make them do that, are you? Every single session. I smiled. Sometimes the best revenge is forcing people to face themselves. 3 days later, I received the signed contract via courier. Included was a handwritten note from my mother. The Kim's daughter just quit her residency to start a tech company. Perhaps you could give her some advice. I laughed out loud, then wrote my response. Tell her to follow her dreams, and remind her that sometimes the best signature to have is your own.